Okay, I call this meeting to order at 7:03. Will staff please do roll call?
Morgan White,
Here.
Andrew Stump,
Here.
Jessica Lemcool, Luke Westalker,
Here.
Gabriel Dussard.
Here.
So we can now move on to approval of past minutes as distributed. Are there any corrections to the October 1st minutes as provided in the meeting packet? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there any public input? No? So we can now move on to the staff report.
Good evening, SAC. I've got some information in the packet regarding an earmark, a line item appropriation the city received that will help pay for the cost of some EV charging infrastructure to be installed at Public Works. The Public Works campus is coming up next after the fire stations for the schedule in the facilities master plan improvements. And so these monies will get spent along with that project. And so we're imagining a bank of EV chargers that would allow us to buy some probably Ford F-150 Lightnings or some sort of pickup truck electric for Public Works fleet. So that's exciting. We've got a couple of updates on how our bulk purchase programs finished up. We had a smaller year this year, 32 tons on 8 systems with geothermal Urbana-Champaign. We had, I think it's our second biggest sales year for solar Urbana-Champaign with 633 kilowatts of installed capacity. Probably the forthcoming end of full retail net metering in Illinois contributed to moving a lot of folks to decide this was the year for solar. So in the future, solar installations will get some net metering, but not for the full retail value. So it just means your payback period's a little bit longer on your investment there. We recently, just to zoom out a little bit further on U-Cycle, U-Cycle has two sides: curbside, which is single-family residence up to 4 attached units, and multifamily. Those are serviced by 2 separate contracts that we publish every 5 years. So it's a 5-year contract. Both of those contracts were held by ABC Sanitary, and those contracts expire in March. So the city published new requests for proposals for those services, and you can see the low bids here. Costs are up dramatically, but not as much as it might seem at first. So a couple things to keep in mind: these are 5-year contracts with optional 2-year extensions. So we're now 6.5 years actually into these contracts, and pricing was flat. There was no escalator built into those contracts in the past. So all of that inflation that everyone else, got in steps year on year and year in the last 6.5 years, we're getting in one fell swoop. Further, when we went back and looked at pricing that we got from bids 6 years ago, the second lowest bid is right in line with the low bid this year, which kind of suggests that we didn't really experience much inflation in the pricing that we're getting. We just were fortunate to enjoy extremely low pricing for the last 6.5 years. Now, with a significant rise in the costs of recycling service starting in March, we're going to need to raise the U-Cycle fees in accordance. We had a couple of city council appearances where we discussed with councilors how they prefer we manage that. And what they settled on was, let's phase in the increases on the fee, and let's accept a proposal to pursue a carry-out bag fee in 2025, or at least starting to work on it in 2025, to generate some revenue that would help offset fee increases. So we'll be working on that in January of 2025. Public Works with Finance Department will work on developing that carry-out bag fee. And we'll bring it back to City Council, and we'll bring it to SAC for some feedback. It'll probably be iterative. We'll put together some information, make a proposal, get some feedback from the commission here and City Council, refine it, and get a final vote one way or the other on it next year. And then I've got a proposed annual meeting schedule, which is on the agenda to discuss and approve. And so we'll take that when we get there. Any questions?
For the electric vehicle charging stations, are those for city vehicles only and not pay per use?
Correct.
And okay. Thank you.
What do you mean by pay per use? What vehicles are those?
So I don't mean different vehicles, but different types of charging stations. Some of the charging stations at the university are for just university fleet. So they're in a sort of restricted parking area. But when you pull up, you just plug in. While the others are public use charging stations that if it's the type 2 where it needed special infrastructure, then you pay with a credit card, and anyone who is allowed to park in that area can use those stations and pay for the charging. And you pay for the parking use and the charging in one credit card system. There's two different types of that on campus. Those are the type 2 chargers, because the type 1 chargers are wall sockets, and we've been looking at how we might be able to expand those as well for on campus. And those don't have an associated fee. But you still have to have the permit to be able to park in that area.
So all of these are just for city use only?
Correct. Correct. It's not unlike, at the Landscape Recycling Center, we have a diesel fuel tank. It's for the Landscape Recycling Center vehicles. It's not a gas station.
Right now, the city only has one vehicle,
Correct.
so there'd be 5, maybe.
I forget the exact number. I don't know if it's in here. 4. It looks like we're planning 4. We're just in preliminary design of where they'll go and how much they cost and all that. But it's a first step to open up the door to buying more EVs. Right now, the Public Works campus, while we have one EV charger, we really can't add that kind of service demand without putting in new electrical equipment. What we have now just won't handle it. So this is really necessary to open up the possibility of buying more. Now we probably buy a few police cars every year. We buy a truck or 2 or 3 every year, and we buy a couple cars, passenger vehicles every year. We don't buy that many cars in any particular year. And not all vehicle purchases are going to be serviceable with an EV. So for instance, Public Works has F-250s, F-350s. There's no equivalent EV available for that. So we won't be converting those in the near future because it's just not available. So we're going to be, as passenger vehicles and small trucks, cycle out of our fleet, we'll be looking at adding those back in as electric. And then, we're gonna follow through on this project And then we'll have to be thinking about a similar project at this facility, at City Hall, so that we can open up electrification here.
Just to clarify, I think you said 4, but it's 4 vehicles at this point. This document doesn't say how many new charging stations.
Correct. It'd be at least 4. I saw some initial renderings. I can't remember how many spaces they were accommodating, whether it was exactly 4 or whether it was 6 with, thinking about the future, but depends on how much we can pay for with this appropriation and what the overall budget of the rest of the project looks like. Like everything, it's all more expensive than when we estimated it years ago.
What are these vehicles normally used for? Like, I'm not familiar with what Public Works does with their vehicles.
Sure. So it could, there's trucks that are from the Arbor Division that are trimming trees, that are doing landscape maintenance. There are other. We have heavy equipment doing sewer maintenance. We maintain some sanitary, not all the sanitary, but some lines, and then the sanitary district maintains the larger lines. We maintain the street lights. That's a pickup truck. Well, there's a couple for that actually. We have facilities maintenance for our own facilities. They have a pickup truck and a utility van. My domain has one vehicle, and we use that. That's the EV in the fleet. So it's anything you see city staff doing outside of buildings, that's Public Works.
Have we ever looked into replacing all the vehicles used for parking or like the people who give out parking tickets?
Parking enforcement?
Yeah.
So they are driving Ford C-Maxes right now. What we would want to replace those with would be, a small passenger vehicle, which is what a C-Max is. Typically, the fleets find it to be simpler, more consistent, and easier to maintain, store parts if it's all one brand. And typically, we're driving all Ford vehicles at this time. But Ford doesn't make a small passenger EV. So we may open that up to something like a Chevy Bolt, which is a small electric car. We would need the charging infrastructure here to do that. We're going to have to see when those replacement vehicles come up. That's when it's going to get really critical. It may be that we can do something temporary while we pay for a more, thorough retrofit later on to allow us to convert those vehicles to full electric if they come up soon. But that's definitely on our minds.
Okay.
How much for a bus fleet is hydrogen? And if there's any that's not hydrogen, then could those be turned into electric buses? Is that even compatible with these city chargers? Or
There are, the Mass Transit District has at least 2, maybe they added some more. I remember they made an initial purchase of 2 hydrogen buses. The rest of them are hybrid diesel. The Mass Transit District has gone towards hydrogen rather than battery electric, for the reasons that they decided on, the efficiency, cost, and what have you. So at this time, I don't anticipate them adding battery electric. They also built and own their own hydrogen fueling station on their own property. So I think they're going to keep going the hydrogen route. Other questions?
Okay, we can now move on to looking at the annual meeting schedule for next year. So this is for 8 months, so there is the possibility that we can meet every other month, or we can keep this meeting schedule and meet all 8 months. So this is kind of up for discussion. What do people think will be the most efficient use of our time? And do any of these months already not work for people so we can just cross it out of the meeting schedule?
These work for me. I'm curious if we went to the every other month, I assume it'd be, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Are there things in March and May, which are the non-even months on this draft list, that we would, like, do we normally do the annual report review? Does it matter if it's April or May or June? I think is there a time frame there that we need to be thoughtful about?
No, we review that as soon as I can get all the data and process it. And so it's happened at different months and different years. But there's no deadline to finish it and publish it. We're just trying to get it done as soon as possible, following the turnover of the year. The months that we have eliminated, through over time that have become kind of the practice here are, January, because sometimes it falls early when a lot of people are still out of town from holidays. And then there's another month where there's a holiday and city council gets rescheduled to Tuesday in this room. And then there's another date that is election day, and they're using this room for that. So those are the ones that we've eliminated in the past. It's just when I glanced at this, I'm like, oh, we're almost every other month. How many do we need this coming year? And that's for you all to decide.
For the climate action plan in Imagine Urbana, do we know their time frame? Like, is it going to be really heavily in early? Like, if it's around March and May, we might want to keep those meetings, but I don't know when it's going to be.
I don't know any expected timeline to finish the Imagine Urbana comp plan.
But even with finishing the plan, it doesn't directly tie to an action. We would want to follow up and continue to follow up, right? But it's not right after they approve the full Imagine Urbana comp plan. We are on a clock. I don't believe that's the case. If we did switch to every other month, we could, what would it take if we chose to add one? Like, say in February, we decided we wanted to have a March meeting for some reason. What would need to be done?
Yeah, that's in Open Meetings Act. That would be a special meeting. And off the top of my head, it's a longer notification period, I believe it's a longer notification period to have a special meeting. But it's essentially, is the room available? What's the notification timeline? And, what members can make that date? So yeah, you can always add another meeting. Getting them, having them consistent on the same, day of the month and time allows people to, put it on their calendar and not have other things. And then also, we don't have to, email everybody and wait for emails back about what days they're available. Probably the communications is the biggest burden for, scheduling a special meeting. It's not that big of a lift.
And the location, because if we don't already have it sort of reserved, someone else might be using the space.
Correct. I don't anticipate that. But, if we were going to add another meeting and it was going to be on the first Tuesday of the month, I don't anticipate anyone else using the room, although it could happen.
Is it easier to cancel the meetings?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Mm-hmm.
Than try and add a new meeting?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
I could do either one. I recognize that a lot of times we have to think through what specific agenda item do we want to talk about. And we didn't do a November, so it's been, right? So it's been 2 months, and we have a healthy agenda, but it's not overflowing. So I could see 2 months being the regular schedule. And instead of, okay, is it going to get canceled or not, just sort of knowing it's every other month. So, but either way is okay with me at this point in my life.
When we get speakers, are they usually pretty flexible? Because the other reason I can think of us keeping more is like, hey, we have more dates you can choose from. Where if we only have 6 dates, it's a little harder.
I think that probably varies from person to person. Yeah, I think there's been instances where, someone said, "Oh, I can't make that meeting, but I can make it next month." That's happened.
Do we want to vote on it? I don't know if anyone has any strong opinions one
Want me
way
to
or
make a
the
motion?
other.
Personally, I'd rather keep more meetings because I think as a youth representative, kind of the point of me being here is to gather experience if this is a part of my future or if it has anything to do with that. So kind of like the more I'm part of this, the better. But that's a very selfish reason, so.
Perfectly reasonable reason.
Yeah. How long are you on the council? Through what month?
The mayor said that even though I turn 18 before May, I would just finish my term, so go through June.
Okay.
How about we keep what's here and then revisit again next fall?
Yes. Yeah. Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Can someone make a motion?
I move to approve the schedule as proposed in the staff report.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Should I read those on to the record?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 2/4/25, 3/4/25, 4/1/25, 5/6/25, 6/3/25, 8/5/25, 10/7/25, and 12/2/25, all at 7 p.m. in council chambers. Okay, so I sent out a little draft resolution. What I'm thinking here is this can be a working document, and maybe over the next 2 months now, until our next meeting, people can send me comments, I can incorporate them, so we have some concise document for when Imagine Urbana comes back, or for the Climate Action Plan, where we've already thought through what are the main goals we really want to get across. So we can discuss some of it now, or if people think this is an effective way of doing it. Did people read through the document and have any thoughts?
I read through it. I have a question on the whereas statements. We talked about this in the previous meeting, right? Are these, how are they picked? Are these all the majority of key points from the Climate Action Plan? I don't remember.
So these are the ones that we talked about last meeting
Highlighted,
that I
okay.
specifically took notes on. But I'm thinking we can just edit this and change it however we want.
I think we should incorporate some of the some whereas statements that reflect the Imagine Urbana. So, there's a big move to, I can't quote it yet, but a big move to be environmentally and economically sustainable. Whereas, one of those, and a couple of those should be in those whereases, which I don't know if there's really a perspective of you can have too many whereases. I've certainly seen a whole page, but I don't know if we've seen 2 or 3 pages. Right now, this is 1 page of whereas statements, so. Is it prudent to consolidate them a little bit?
I don't think there's a rule, but
Typically not
Might wanna
2
set
or
a
3
limit.
pages.
you might want to set an arbitrary but reasonable limit.
Maybe there's a way to consolidate some of the ones we have and add in some of the Imagine Urbana, value statements and big ideas, big moves. And maybe little moves.
Were there any of the recommendations that we should really highlight or things that weren't here that people would like to add?
I wonder on the tree one, section 6, our draft resolution says plant trees in all vacant city tree sites. We had some conversations about, we need to appropriately staff and resource, or primarily resource the, is it called a tree crew, the group of staff that maintain the city trees? Because, even if we were able to find funding to plant all the vacant sites, then those trees need the follow-up support. That just planting them's not enough. We need to also have that resource of the crew. Was there there was equipment too, right?
City council took that up and appropriated more funds for that department, and we have added a third arbor tech. And we're now in the process of catching up, but we've expanded staff capacity there.
So plant trees is the thing that's still needed.
Well, I think one could presume that plant trees in all vacant tree sites implies appropriating the resources that such a thing requires. Whether that be labor, a truck, funds to buy the material on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah, I think we should still add and appropriately resource
Yeah,
the
sure.
caretaking, yeah.
It could read,
Yeah.
appropriate all necessary resources to plant.
Yes.
Wondering for section 10, where we say electrify the vehicles, should also add equipment and tools.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
I was reading over the old climate action plan last night in this document, and neither of them seem to really have anything about education. I don't know how much jurisdiction the city has over school curriculums or anything that's taught, but is there a way to incorporate that into this plan somehow?
We definitely don't have jurisdiction over the school district. There is other education that happens outside of schools. The Park District actually has a really robust environmental education program. And then we're doing education with our bulk purchase programs. We do some, Park District does some, and obviously the school district is in the education business.
But I think we could have a section, like there's the section 5 says to coordinate with the Park District. We could add one that says coordinate with the library and other, we say with the school districts. I don't know how much the city interacts with the school districts, but the city does interact with the library quite a bit. There's a connection. I don't know what kind of connection. But just coordinate with local entities such as the library to promote environmental education or sustainable. Would you want to say promote education, or what would be the phrasing that makes sense to put in there for us? Expand. And then just education or environmental. What descriptive word makes more sense to kids these days to students? Is it sustainability, environmentalism, conservation?
Probably sustainability.
Sustainability education and climate change awareness,
Yeah.
something like that.
We can also connect that with section 3 and see if we can get some sort of U-cycle thing in the schools. I know I used to have something where like we would learn in school what was recyclable and what wasn't, so I think that could be another connection that we could kind of use to get into that realm.
I know that, so the city runs a volunteering campaign every first Saturday of the month called Fresh Crew. Perhaps you're familiar with it, but they do kind of, cutting down honeysuckle and those sorts of seed sorting volunteering. But they have gotten that into the school's announcements and like advertise it directly to the students. So it might also be possible to maybe create some event that could be advertised in a similar way, because that might have some traction. I know many people, because I've been to Fresh Crew before, many people from the school district do go there, so.
I have a question on number 12. Is the carryout bag fee, I guess what I'm wondering is, because in the staff report, it talks about carryout bag fee, and we're saying plastic carryout bag fee. I know that our intention was plastic bags. Is there a name that is the city just calling it carryout bag fee, in which case we could probably just use the same terminology, or is that just whatever works in the, is it kind of branded in that way at this point?
Pretty much all cities in Illinois are using nearly identical carryout bag fee ordinances. Very little variation from them. They apply to all single-use carryout bag fees, doesn't distinguish on the materials. So my expectation is we would also use a nearly identical one to all the other cities.
The word plastic out of that particular line item. Can we talk about the U-cycle bins? So it says, number 2 says, incentivize businesses to recycle using U-cycle bins that can be integrated into the residential pickup routes. How would they get integrated? Do we already have a vision of how that would work? I don't remember that. I'm sorry, my memory's not going well these days.
What we talked about last meeting is one of the biggest strains on the U-cycle was when it was like out of their way or different types of bins and stuff. So I was thinking if there are ways that we could try and integrate them more into the residential routes, that would be better.
Like the multifamily?
There's a logic there. The truck's already on the street rather than a completely separate truck. Commercial recycling is probably more similar to multifamily recycling than curbside. There are cardboard-only dumpsters on the multifamily route. I don't think we use mixed stream dumpsters, which is probably what the commercial would use. Probably some would have mixed stream, some would have cardboard only. So that's possible. The ways and means is probably something we would inquire about, ask and leverage the expertise of our existing haulers, and get some feedback from them before designing an RFP for a new service.
Yeah, I guess when you're talking about the multifamily bid that's going to go out, or if you already have one, have you talked to the potential bidders about it?
No. I mean, that's a long process. That's an ordinance. a fee, a fee schedule.
Do they have ideas on how that could be implemented?
Yeah, I haven't asked them. No. Whether it's integrated into the multifamily service or it's a standalone service, it's an ordinance to, have that regulation and a new fee.
Does Champaign have a service?
Commercial recycling is far less common in the U.S. Required, obligatory, city-run commercial recycling is far less common in the U.S. as compared to residential recycling. Even multifamily recycling is not that common.
If you had both cities go together on a service.
And then you got to have two city councils pass the same ordinance at roughly the same time. I mean, it's nice when it works out. It does happen from time to time. I think both cities created stormwater utility programs about the same time that were very similar. So it's not impossible.
What happens with these bins that are like inside city buildings? Are there then the individual bins outside that they get dumped into?
So we actually have city facilities recycling integrated into the multifamily contract.
This may end up being a really awful question, but if I understand correctly, one of the big problems is that with recycling for businesses, it's the materials recycled are a lot different. Would it be possible to just like divide the recycling trucks into different sections and collect it that way, or?
That doesn't seem to be the way that recycling service has been going. In the past, there were, trucks that had, 2 bins, containers on one side and fibers on the other. And even further back in time, there was multiple bins for all kinds of different materials. But it seems that everyone is going to single stream or single stream with a little bit of cardboard only here and there. In what vendors are doing weighs heavily on what kind of costs you can expect to pay. There are not a lot of haulers anymore keeping spare trucks around. So if you start a new service, somebody's got to buy a, whatever it is, $250,000, $500,000 truck.
Part of the problem with the separated streams is the users don't want to bother to separate them out, right? And so it is more, the cost of recycling itself is lower if they're separated. It's the convincing people to have separate bins at home or in their workplace and then having the pickup keep them separated. That's the thing that just hasn't really worked out yet in our country. Works in some other countries pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I know in Europe you have like, I don't know if this is probably similar, but you have like on-street bins. So there's a designated area in the kind of middle of every residential district where you can just bring your glass or plastics and throw that in. And it's no additional cost or it's probably very little because they only have to pick it up from one location, which serves many, many households. So, I mean, I don't know if it's possible to implement something like that because, for instance, glasses are still rather easy to sort as compared to like other more nitty-gritty kinds of recyclables.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to consider a new service, we can put every idea on the table, every model on the table, and contemplate what would work best for us.
And my mom in London, they sort at the house, they sort paper in a certain place, cans and bottles in a certain place. They have their own composting bags now. So it's all done at the house. And then the truck comes up and they put one thing in one part of the truck and,
So they're using the divided truck?
yeah. Mm-hmm. They've been doing that for 20 years, 25 years.
Mhm.
It's very standardized. Everybody knows what
Mhm.
what goes where, so.
When I was in Cincinnati, they weren't picking up from apartments and stuff because they get so contaminated. But the city would have huge dumpsters you could go to and just dump all of your recycling in. Do we have any of those around Urbana?
There's a private hauler that has dumpsters, that has, I don't know, whatever the vessel is, but has free recycling drop-off.
Okay.
It's in Champaign.
I'd like to send some suggestions while looking at the draft Imagine Urbana campaign document.
So
I don't have any other questions right now on it.
So maybe before the February meeting, people can review the Imagine Urbana, the 2015 to 2020 Climate Action Plan, and this, and just kind of compile their comments, or send them to me. I'll try and compile everything. Then at the February meeting, we can look through it again, see kind of where the progress is with Imagine Urbana and Climate Action Plan, and go from there.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
For Imagine Urbana, is there, where would I find the link for accessing it? Has it been sent to us? Or?
I can send all of this to everyone after the meeting, so it's all in one place.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you help us with you sending it without us accidentally hitting reply all and getting all of us?
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else?
I think I'll just state that Imagine Urbana, like I said earlier, I don't know what the schedule for approval will be, but it's in draft form now. I think the city's getting some feedback from the public. That will be approved when it's approved. That's a multi-decade comprehensive plan, and not everything that's in it is going to be given to staff to implement in the first year. So I think it's great that you're like seeing what's likely going to be in the final and starting to contemplate it. But we don't know exactly what'll be in the final draft, nor what'll be, on the agenda the first year or so. But this is a great start.
So can we think of this more as like we're going through and choosing what we think as a committee are like the key things
For sure.
that we really support in this
For sure.
huge document? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I
And
think,
you may want to think about, what kind of time frame you're thinking of these, either all of these as a group or maybe time frames for individuals. Is the commission thinking that this is a recommendation for, the next 4 years or the next 40 years? That makes a big difference.
maybe we could try to prioritize them, the things to focus on first, or, of course, the priorities change, but we could say, based on the current moment, we recommend prioritizing these, 2 or 3 items. I was just going to say, I think that these items in the resolution, they don't necessarily need to be named in the Imagine Urbana draft plan. They can be, they're all in the same philosophy of what's in that plan. Some of these are probably listed, and some of them are things that they may not be already in there, and they don't need to necessarily be in there because the plan is a strategic vision, a roadmap or guidepost as opposed to an action plan.
You may also consider, as you're contemplating time frame, aligning it with the city council's mayor and council goals time frame. That's every 2 years. Now that may be too short of a time frame, but you may consider the start and finish of 2 of those cycles, perhaps. So you may contemplate, here's what we think the city can and should get done in 4 years, starting with, the next iteration of mayor and council goals. Because the mayor and council goals tend to really zero in on, move from the big picture aspirational, like a comp plan, a lot closer to, what are the actual resources that need to be, what can the city actually get done in the next 2 years, and are the resources available, et cetera. So aligning, I think it's great to align with Imagine Urbana, as you've already been talking about, and you may also consider aligning with the mayor and council goal cycles.
Can you remind us when those normally get issued?
I think that they go to a vote, I believe I can't remember. I
Like
would
it
have to
was,
check.
Like early fall, right? Like on the fiscal year kind of time frame, not,
Here, it was November 6th, November 27th, and February 1st.
There were meetings
Yeah.
on it.
which calendar years was that?
2023, and then February 1st, 2024.
Winter time is
Yeah.
when they were getting established.
I'll send all these documents then, all at once. Okay. Is there anything else? Okay, then I adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned.